Lancaster City Schools? Did you go there? All right, so you probably recognize my voice. If you've ever gotten the phone calls where I call and tell you there's no school that day, I'm the one who makes those phone calls. So anyway, my name is Kevin Snyder. I'm Director of Education Technology at Lancaster City Schools. I just thought you might be interested, because you're all pre-service teachers, to kind of know my career path to get to where I am today, because it's not necessarily how you would think it was. I graduated from Zanesville High School in 1989. I went to the University of Akron, studied social studies education, 7 through 12. Then I started trying to find a job. In 1993, the economy was very similar to kind of what it is now. There was a glut of teachers in the system. Trying to find a job was kind of difficult. I had one interview that summer for a social studies teaching job at high school. A couple of days later after the interview, I found out I did not get the job. Next day in the paper, I see they hired a new football coach for that social studies position. So I knew right there that what I needed to do, okay? So that next school year, I substitute taught. I worked at Sears selling sporting goods, and I got a job working with Children's Services. I also coached 2 sports, okay? So I substitute taught, I coached 2 sports, I worked 2 other jobs. And, like a lot of people, I moved back home with mom and dad, okay? So that was back in 1993, all right? So I coached basketball, I coached golf. That whole school year, I substitute taught. The following school year, looking for a job. You know, I want to be a teacher, right? I want to be a full-time teacher. The only thing that came my way, again, I'm social studies was pretty hard to get into, was the basketball coach at Maysville High School called me up and said, hey, we need a tutor. I know you're a good basketball coach. You want to come over here? That's how I got a job. Okay? So that's some of the things that you got to think about as you get into the job field. You got to be willing to go do a lot of different things to make yourself marketable in the environment. I taught at Maysville for 7 years, or just over 6 years. At that time, I was doing intervention, tutoring, Title I, any job they were throwing my way, I was taking. Okay? 1997, I think it was, Maysville opened up a computer lab at the Maysville Middle School. They said, hey, we need a teacher. I said, hey, I'll do it. Okay? That's how I got into it. So I started teaching computer science to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in 1997. Okay? I did that for a few years, decided, hey, I kind of like this. You know, I actually like it better than I thought I would like social studies teaching. So I enrolled in Ohio University's graduate program for educational technology. Before I finished that program, West Muscatine Schools, right there in Muscatine County as well, in 2000 said, hey, we're looking for a technology director. We're starting to get all these new things coming into the district. We need to have somebody to manage it. I said, I'd apply for it. They hired me, and that's how I got my in. I finished my master's degree a year later in 2001 in education technology. I worked at West Muscatine as director of technology for 9 years until 2009. And at that time, I came to Lancaster to take the position that I'm in right now. I've also added Ohio School Principal license to myself, and right now I'm in my superintendent internship program, and I'll be finishing up my superintendent license here in a few months. So that's just about me, and that's how I've gotten to where I am today. So you can see, you know, I didn't just have this linear path to where I am today. I kind of just was willing to go get myself into different things, learn in those experiences, and then build upon that for my next job. And that's how educational technology is in the schools, okay? You in the classroom with technology, you got to be willing to just dig in, okay? The number one way that you learn to use technology is by doing it. It's not by me lecturing to you. It's not by any book. It's just by you doing it. And the most important thing that you're going to find out is that the most important thing you can do in the classroom with technology is let the kids learn by doing it. Okay? So that's what we're going to try to focus on a little bit. Okay, using technology in the classroom. Again, I started teaching in the early 90s, okay? Technology back then was maybe you had a computer to use and maybe you didn't in the classroom, okay? It was really just starting to come into place. It's no longer an option, okay? Let's look at these initiatives that we have in the state. Actually, federal government too. Common Core Standards, also known as Ohio's New Learning Standards, okay? Don't call it Common Core in Ohio. If you do, they'll repeal it. But anyway, it's Ohio's New Learning Standards. All right? That's what we work on. The nice thing about the Common Core standards is They embed the technology standards within the curriculum. No longer is it separate. Until recently, Ohio's had its own academic content standards for technology, and those typically have sat on a shelf in the classroom. Okay, the teacher, after they got done doing English, language arts, math, then they tried to do some of the technology standards. Now, with Common Core, you're forced to. Okay? It is part of the Common Core. It is part of your English language arts standards that you do. And I will show you an example of that here in a few moments. Formative instructional practices. Have you guys heard of formative instructional practices? Okay. Basically, formative instructional practices, you're trying to gather evidence as to how your students are performing towards the standards at any given time, so you can then make better decisions about how to instruct those students. Okay? It often involves formative assessments. Again, you're trying to assess where they're at so you can adjust your instruction. One of the best ways to do that is through technology. You can get real-time data on how your kids are doing so you can make instructional decisions. In schools like Lancaster City Schools, we have a lot of devices for people to use. We have a bunch of apps on iPads, Dreambox, Lexia, ST Math we just started this school year. There's kids do their STAR testing, which is how you assess their reading and math skills at the early levels. So then you can see and you can check them multiple times to see how they're progressing throughout the school year. Now we're required to report that information to the state of Ohio as well. So technology plays a huge role in this formative instructional practice model. Differentiation, okay? There is no better way to differentiate for your students than through using technology, okay? You may have students that are at your gifted level in your classroom. You may have students that are at a lower functioning level in your classroom. The nice thing, again, you're using technology tied to the standards. You're using technology to assess where kids are and how they're learning. And then you're going to differentiate your instruction to meet the needs of those individual students. That might be group work, pulling them into smaller groups while other groups are going on and advancing their skills. Any of those models. But that is how you're going to use technology as well to help differentiate your instruction. Now, we've got Ohio's next generation assessments. Don't call it PARCC testing. Don't call it that stuff. Again, in Ohio, if you do, we'll repeal it. But Ohio's next generation of assessments, that is your PARCC testing and your state-developed assessments. All of that now is delivered through technology. In Lancaster City Schools last year, we did the pilot testing of this. And it very closely ties to the Common Core or Ohio's new learning standards. Okay? They're very closely linked. The teachers that we had that did it, because we are teaching the new curriculum to our students, they thought it matched up extremely well, and they thought it was a much better test than the previous achievement testing. Okay? So it is a well planned out test. So that's another thing, technology. We're right now in the school district putting together a plan for how we're going to get kids ready for that testing when it hits in February. Okay? So we've got technology in place. We're doing some professional development this week on Thursday with all of our teachers. We have a 2-hour late start. They'll all be getting training on how we're delivering the assessments. And throughout the school year, we have several trainings for our teachers on this. We're also going to have practice sessions with our students so they can learn how these assessments are going to run. Again, all through technology. Okay? Technology is so critical. And the most important thing with technology here is that they must actively engage with technology peers and experts. You know, we'll talk about 21st century skills here in a few moments, but that is what really technology can do for you in the classroom. All right, Common Core standards. All right, here's one of the standards that's in Common Core. Writing standard for grade 4. With some guidance and support from adults, use technology, including the internet, to produce and publish writing, as well as to interact and collaborate with others, demonstrate sufficient command of keyboarding skills to type a minimum of 1 page in a single sitting. That's all technology, folks. They're using technology to accomplish that entire Common Core standard. They're using technology, including the internet, to produce and publish writing. They're using it to collaborate with others. They're producing it using keyboarding skills. Okay? That is not optional for teachers. This is what they have to do. This is your writing standard. As you look through the standards, they're all linked to technology similarly to this. Okay?
Kevin, got
Yes.
a question. So if we're looking at this as a writing standard in grade 4, I'm assuming then starting someplace, maybe even in kindergarten, that the demonstration of command of the keyboarding skills has got to be taught by everybody else up to that point.
Yes. Yep.
Who teaches it?
Well, this is the classroom teacher. Classroom teachers are responsible for these standards.
So, I mean, who teaches the keyboarding skills?
The classroom teachers are responsible for teaching all these standards,
Okay.
right there. So, there you can see. Now, we have computer labs, we have educational assistants that can help out. This falls on the teacher to teach this, okay? So, what's the best way to do that? Well, we'll talk about that here in a few moments. Common Core standards. You know, it's just not a novel way to engage students, but it requires learners to make complex decisions about how, when, and why to use technology, something educators must do well. So, it's not, you know, these standards aren't, and what we're doing in the schools today, it's not just about what the teacher's doing with technology, it's about what the kids are doing with the technology. That's the important point here. It doesn't really matter what your skills are with technology, it matters what the kids' skills are with technology. All right, let me talk a little bit about this TPAC model. And the reason why I want to talk to you about the TPAC model is this shows you now, with all these things in place that we have to do with technology, how this all fits together in a school building and in the school district. There are 3 things that you have to look at. The TPAC model is for your pedagogy, your content, and your 21st century technology knowledge. Some people have pedagogy down, how you teach, right? Some people have the content down. You're an expert in math. Some people are an expert with technology, 21st century technology. All those by themselves don't cut it anymore, okay? As a school district, you know, and in my role is to try to make sure that we put the 21st century technology in place, the content in place, and have the teachers ready with their pedagogy to do all these things. And when you do, you're right here in the middle. When you're not, you're more limited in what you can do. Okay? You as a teacher, these are 3 areas that you need to be focusing on. Don't just focus on your content knowledge. Okay? That is important. Don't just focus on your pedagogy. And don't just focus on using technology. Okay? You as a teacher, you got to try to marry all those 3 together for your students. And as a district, we try to put all that together for you so that you have the tools in place to support you as you try to do these models. Now, at the high school, we have every student has an iPad now. Okay? So what are we doing? We're putting 21st century technology in place. We did 2 years of training with our teachers before we even gave them the iPads. We put the pedagogy first. Okay? Content. We're still a little bit behind here at the high school. What we're doing is we're purchasing electronic content for the iPads in replacement for textbooks. So we've had 2 replacement cycles of textbooks, math and language arts. We've purchased all that content now to go into technology. Our science and social studies content is still limited there. So we're working through that process. But over the next few years, as we do this cycle, we'll get to the point where we have all these pieces in place so that we can support it. Okay? All right, what skills must a teacher possess to teach in today's classroom? Okay? And I think this will probably be very important for you. What I find is the most effective way to tie Common Core with technology, which is what we're trying to do here, right? Kids are going to be assessed through technology. They have to learn all those skills that the Common Core tells them to learn, is through project-based learning. How many of you have heard about project-based learning? Okay, some of you have. All right. So, project-based learning, basically, for those of you who don't know, you're trying to develop projects that tie the standards together from multiple disciplines for the kids to produce some kind of work that they're sharing with their peers or even a wider audience. It's a very authentic way to learn. And it's really about the only way that you can try to get all those standards taught in an effective manner. You can't teach any of these standards anymore in isolation. Okay? It used to be you could teach your reading or your writing or your math standards in isolation of other things. Common Core makes you bring all those together. Project-based learning strategies are ways that you can do that very efficiently. We have a lot of our teachers in the district now using these models to teach the their students with. It's very, very effective. Project-based learning, you gotta establish real-world connections, okay? You basically do this through giving the kids a driving question, okay? How are we gonna solve a certain problem in our environment, or in the world, or some kind of problem that they have to come up with, or that they have to solve? They have to do in-depth inquiry into that problem. They work with their peers. They decided that now it's important to them. They need to know how to do this, so they're driving their own learning with this, okay? It's not just the teacher just lecturing to them about their learning. The kids are actively using the technology now and their peer relationships to try to dig deeper into what the problem is that they have to solve. They have a voice and choice, okay? They have choices in how they're going to find that information, how they're going to present their findings to the group. It gives them a voice. They have to critique and revise it with their peers. Maybe they're even involving subject area experts, maybe somebody out in the community, or some expert with NASA or something that they're communicating with to revise their project. And a public audience. Okay, they have to be able to present their work to a public audience. It could be the school building in general, but typically you want them to present to members of the community or even other experts. Every year at the end of the school year now, a lot of our English language arts teachers are having their kids present an end of the year project, and they invite all kinds of people from the community in, and they have to present to that audience. And it really drives home the point to those kids how important it is, and they really invest themselves in this activity to make sure they don't look like an idiot in front of everybody out in the world. Okay? Some of them do. A lot of them really do succeed. So it really drives home a lot of the points of what you want to do with everything that's facing you in education today. The most important thing in this whole scenario is the teacher as facilitator. Now, I'm probably guilty of it from my time in the classroom, and a lot of teachers still are today, is the teacher wants to instruct whole classroom instruction to the students. You know, the stage on the stage type of a model where you're disseminating all this information, all this content knowledge that you have to your class, and you expect them all to master it just through that. Well, that's not what this model does. This model is the teacher facilitator. If you walk into some of our classrooms, you'll hear teachers saying that they won't help them find the answer. They have to go find it on their own, or talk to your peer, or go find it on the internet. You go find your answer. I, as a teacher, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to just tell you the answer. The inquiry process is how you're going to find that answer. Okay? We're challenging their thinking process here. We're getting into the 21st century skills. Critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, communication and collaboration, innovation. Those are the skills that project-based learning makes students master. A lot of people hear about how our kids aren't creative anymore. They don't think critically about problems. They don't solve problems. This is one of the processes that you can use to get students to use those parts of their brain. Students love it. They really, really love it. They really get engaged, and you'd be surprised at how much more willing they are to put all the time and effort into a project like this rather than just mastering some content for a quiz on Friday. Okay? It's really a difference. Not all of our teachers are doing this. We have more and more teachers all the time getting to this model. Focus on what the students are doing with technology. Again, this isn't about what the teacher knows about technology. This is about what the kids are doing with technology. The kids are using the technology to learn their content. They're learning it to communicate with their peers. They're learning it to produce work. That's what the students are doing. And it's really interesting that this year our district has made another flip. Have you ever heard of walkthroughs? Okay? Walkthroughs, for those of you who don't know, is just a real quick way for a principal to walk into your classroom and monitor what you're doing in the classroom. Okay? So some of the things on there in the past have been like the teacher has posted the learning target for the day. Principal walks into the classroom, looks up on the wall, learning target, posted right up on the wall, check it off on the list, thank you very much. Now, our walkthrough forms say, do the students know the learning target of the day? It's an entirely different standard. We used to talk, one of the items we used to have on the walkthrough form was, is the teacher using technology? Now it says, are the students using technology? So that's where we're flipping in the district from. It's not about what the teacher knows anymore. It's about what the kids know. Not about what the teacher's doing, no matter what the kids are doing. Okay? That's where we're focusing. The SAMR model. Anybody heard of the SAMR model? I'll get a little bit deeper into the technology dive right now. Okay? SAMR model is something that we've used in the district now for a couple of years, especially with our high school iPad project. The SAMR model is, how are you using technology now to really change the way that students are learning? SAMR stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. What does the technology enable you to do that you weren't able to previously do? Okay? Here's what we have. So the lowest level of using technology in the classroom is substitution. Okay? So think of it in terms of, did you guys always have to take notes in class? I assume you probably did. All right, now we give you an iPad. Take notes on the iPad. That's substitution. Is there some value in that? There's some, but it's minimal. It's really not making some big change in the classroom the way kids have always learned. Augmentation. Okay. Now you're doing something that's a little bit higher on the spectrum. It has an improvement. Okay, so now kids read a book. Here's an iPad. Here's a book. That's substitution. Okay. Now, on the iPad, what can you do that's different? Well, you can highlight a word and have it read that word to you. You can highlight it and have it bring up the definition to you. Okay? You're augmenting what that student can now do with that device. Okay? So that's a different level of using technology in the classroom. Again, it's focused on what the kids are doing with the technology. Okay? Next level, modification. Well, this makes us so much easier than what could have been done before. We used to, hand write out our term papers. Okay? Now kids type it on Google Docs and submit it to their teacher. Okay? You couldn't have done that before. Okay? The teacher can bring it up, they can make their corrections on it and everything, send it back to the kid. All through that model. Redefinition. Now you can do things that a few years ago you could not have done. Okay? Total new ballgame, redefinition. Things that were previously inconceivable. Kids are now using iMovie on their iPads to create all kinds of project-based learning activities and projects that they weren't able to do before. Okay? There's just all kinds of things that they're doing. Now, where do you want to be on this scale? Does anybody want to guess? Anybody have any thoughts? Where do you want to be on that in your classroom? Where do you want it to be? Are you always going to be at redefinition? Is substitution okay? Substitution is okay. Probably most of the time that you walk in the classroom, you'll see substitution or augmentation going on. Okay? That's probably what you'll mostly see. But we can't just settle for that. We have to continue to stretch ourselves to modification and redefinition. Not every teacher is going to have every lesson that is redefining what they could have done before. This is tough stuff to do. Okay? These things are fun. If you're only always substituting in our district, okay, that's not where we want you to be. We want you to be going here. We want you to occasionally be going here and there. You don't always have to be up there. But this is kind of the continuing that you need to work through in your classroom. The SAMR swimming pool. All right? Again, this is the shallow, okay? This is just getting started into the technology with your students and really having to do stuff. A modification and redefinition is you're jumping into the deep end, okay? That's a scary thing for teachers, okay? Really, really a scary thing. The important thing that you have to do is get the kids diving into that pool. You as a teacher, you step back in that role as facilitator now, okay? You can't be the master of everything technology. Okay? But what you can do is design lessons and activities for your students to engage in that allow them to dive into the deep end. Okay? And you have to be willing as a teacher to step back and let them do that, let them make mistakes. Let them work with their peers to correct those mistakes. And then, you'll see them take their learning to a whole different level. Okay? Now, this isn't nice and neat, but these are some of the different basic apps that get used all the time in education that make these different parts of the SAMR model possible. So, you as a pre-service teacher, you may be wanting to think about this as you, especially if you're starting to do some of your field experiences. I don't know if they still call it field experience.
They do,
Okay.
yeah.
Or as you start going into your internship.
The professional internship is the
Professional internship.
AKA student teaching, but then they have something called the clinical experience now, which occurs their sophomore and their junior year.
So, as you're starting to do these experiences, you're going to want to start to think of, in these experiences that you're doing, what are some of these things that you could be doing that maybe you're not seeing in that classroom from your cooperating teacher? Think of those things. Think, oh, well, this is what they're doing, in the classrooms where they're learning activity. But, if I had my choice to infuse technology, these are some of the things that I could do to do that exact same kind of a tool. But now you're adding a much deeper level of learning to your students. So those are some of the apps that a lot of our teachers use, and teachers from around the world are using right now. I do believe, I don't know if you can see that on.
It's
that
not very
particular
big. What we'll
one,
do, Kevin, is we will post this on our.
I sent you the PowerPoint.
Yes, we'll send it out electronically so you'll receive this PowerPoint presentation and you can access it that way.
And again, not every learning activity has to occur up here. Okay? They're not always going to go out and create their own iMovie. Okay? It's not always going to be, if you try to do that in your classroom all the time, it's going to be hard to do. Okay? Some of the things that you're doing are down at these levels. And that's fine. But occasionally you have to design some opportunities for your kids to go up there.
But Kevin, what's exciting for us, I know Deborah and Paul and I are thinking about how do we incorporate technology into our classroom from a student perspective as well. And many of the assignments that I'm doing from a reading or literacy perspective, I'm asking them to start to think in terms of how do they use these apps to tutor children.
Yes.
And so that's why we're excited to have you today. How do we, as professors, embed into our courses the kinds of things that Kevin's talking about today? I know,
Right.
Deborah, one of the things you were worried about.
Yeah, I think you're going to see some changes in some of my classes.
So it's very exciting. And Paul right now is exploring with all kinds of technology, aren't you?
I tried to, but I'm hearing having more and more questions.
Yeah.
Well, and if you do some of your experiences in our schools, right now, pretty much when you walk into, most of you are in that K-9 area, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And most of those buildings right now, we have, in most classrooms, you have 4, 5, 6 iPads in the classroom. You might have access to a cart of iPads or 2 that can come in and do whole class instruction, which is really neat for when you want to do PBL. Remember what PBL is? Project-based learning.
Yeah, they gotta learn these terms.
That's one thing in education, you gotta learn all these acronyms. We'll throw them around quickly. But, as you, especially if you get into some of our schools, and I know even Amanda and other districts like that have iPads and apps and stuff in there. See the apps that we have available that we put on there, such as Dreambox, Lexia. We have, a bunch of these different ones on there. So, we have iMovie on a lot of them. If you go to our high school, you see a lot of these puppet things. They do puppet pals and stuff like that. You even see some of the younger teachers or lower level teachers getting into that stuff now too. So, you can start getting some kind of experience with those because, again, what a lot of our teachers now do is they use the technology to assess where their kids are in their learning. Then they'll divide their class up into different areas so that maybe these 6 kids now are using the iPads to do some other learning activity while they have 6 kids over here that are needing group instruction on a certain objective, and then they have another table with 4 or 5 kids that are doing more individualized instruction, and you have another group of kids who are doing their whole own activity in the classroom, okay? So, again, that's a differentiation, okay? So, all those things really do tie together. I know a lot of these things may not be things that you've heard of yet, but
They will.
you will.
Kevin,
capture
talk
it.
to them a little bit about the initiative as far as getting iPads into your K-2. And, I mean, you're spending a lot of money that way. They heard a little bit about the high school, but
We have right now, we have 2,000 iPads for K to 5, okay? And we have about 400 or 500 of those left to put out in the classroom. It takes a
How many
long
students
process.
are in K to 5 then?
A little over 3,000, like
So they're trying to
3,100,
get-
3,200.
Wow.
Wow.
About 3,200 this year. So, now we're not looking at one device per child at the elementary level, but what we're looking again is we want to have basically 6 iPads per classroom. We have iPad carts available.
And the
for
teachers all have
class-
iPads?
The teachers all have iPads. So yes. So that's kind of the model that we've been going
we're
with.
gonna work.
We're not quite to the 6 in every elementary classroom yet, but we will be by the time next school year rolls around. So it takes a long time to build up that process, and there's only so much manpower to get that work done too, so. At the junior high level, some of you may be junior high level folks in here as well, we have 6 iPad carts per building. So again, most of those are used for whole classroom instruction. They'll bring the iPads in for a day or two, and they'll do project-based learning activities or whatever other research or whatever they need to do. We also have multiple computer labs in the junior highs and stuff like that. And of course, the high school, we have
You
the
know,
one-to-one project.
Kevin, I had talked to Paul Allen, our tech person here, about ordering a class set of iPads and maybe only starting out with just 6, say for instance. And he mentioned that the library a few years ago purchased some iPads for students to be able to check them in and out. And it didn't go well because the fact that the iPad had to be almost assigned to one user, and they never figured out how to work around that in a checkout situation in the library. Obviously, you figured that out the way you're handling it. Is there an easy answer to that?
No.
But
But what we've done is we've generated, so if you got a classroom, Mrs. Smith's 4th grade class at South Elementary, whatever it might be, we assign an iTunes user account to that set of 6 iPads.
iTunes user account.
Yeah, an iTunes account. All these iPads have to have an iTunes account. That's how you get apps from the App Store and all those different
Okay.
things. So, like at the high school, it's really easy. Every kid has their own iTunes account, and that's what they use for their iPad. But if you think in terms of our elementary school, you might have 6, 7, 8, 10 iPads in your classroom or whatever it is, and we set up a classroom iTunes account for that class. So it might be Mrs. Smith's 4th grade. That's the iTunes account that is loaded on all those iPads, and then when they need apps, that's the account that's used to get the apps.
All right.
So
Well,
Jen,
we'll
we
probably
could
cut-
set those up as professors, and then they would,
Exactly. So we'll pick his brain a little bit more, but I think we could
And what
probably
we
put a
do-
proposal in for a few and try it, and students could check them out through us to do tutoring, to work with students, which would be very exciting.
Yeah.
All right.
So, and the other thing about that is, with apps, we have volume purchasing program set up with Apple. So, and the reason you do that is so you can make sure that you're licensed correctly for the apps. Because the apps are a licensing issue. You can't just go buy a copy of an app and put it on multiple
Yeah.
devices. You have to buy one license for each. So, like in that setting where we have 6 iPads in the classroom and she really wants to have iMovie, that doesn't really apply, but you'd have to go out and buy 6 licenses of that and then have it installed on that iTunes user account for that classroom. So there's a lot to that process, but
So we'll have Paul Allen call you.
is he the guy from Apple?
No, well, he's our
Oh,
tech
for
person
Microsoft.
here, which everything would have to, do they know you well at Apple?
No. Just the salespeople, because I think they bought a Mercedes from our.
All right.
But anyway, all right, let me jump ahead here just for a few minutes, and we can do a lot of Q&A too here. Here are some websites that you might want to check out, if you're interested in educational technology, which you all should be after today. Edutopia is absolutely one of the best. It's just phenomenal. If you go to Edutopia and you want to know about how to do project-based learning tied to Common Core in your classroom, they got a bunch right there for you. Okay? Now, I do have Twitter on here.
Abby.
Okay? Twitter is an invaluable resource for you as a personal learning network. Okay? And by that I mean you should have a Twitter account. And you should have it set up as if you got your own personal Twitter account, keep that separate. Create your own professional Twitter account, okay? You can get on there and you can find out all kinds of information about project-based learning or, certain different reading instructional strategies with your students. Get on there and connect with other educators out there in the field and learn from them and converse with them. I mean, if you want to follow me on Twitter and see some of the things that I post and different things, I think it's a great tool for you to learn from. I think you can really expand. And what the nice thing too is with Twitter is, especially for you, if you're looking to get a job in a couple years, if you have a very good profile, on Facebook and on Twitter and different places, that does help you. Okay. So just be thinking about that.
What about LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, yeah. But what have you done? LinkedIn's more, like putting your Vita basically up there for the whole world to see. So as you start getting experiences, yes, I have a LinkedIn profile. But all right, and then it is time for some Q&A if you have. This is my contact information, my email address, my Twitter, if you want. The other thing is we have an event coming up here in October, on October 9th, called Teachtoberfest. Last year, I called it Techtoberfest. Okay, last year on October 10th, we had no students in session. All of our teachers get together at the high school for a day of all kinds of professional development activities. Last year it was all technology focused, so we called it Techtoberfest. This year we're calling it Teachtoberfest. We're still going to have a bunch of technology sessions going on, but we're going to have a lot of other sessions going on based around Ohio's new learning standards, also known as PARC. Our new assessments that we have to do. Our teachers are going to be in sessions learning the things that we do in our district and the initiatives that we have. I do have a registration website built for the day. It's called Teachtoberfest this year, and I will share that with Terry after my teachers go in and sign up for sessions. And if any of you would want to come along, you can just use that registration link, sign up for some classes as long as there's room. Come over to Lancaster High School, pop into some of our sessions, and see what it is that we're doing. You'll hear some of the things that I talked about today going on in some of those sessions. Some of those sessions are very specific for our people. Like I said, there might be a certain math session that we make sure that all of our 3rd through 5th grade teachers get. Other than that, a lot of the sessions are very general too. So you can come in there. Some of the sessions are on apps that we use, and all kinds of different things. So it could be a neat experience for you. So I will send that out to Terry after my teachers get all signed up, and you guys will probably have a couple of weeks if you wanted to go on and register for some sessions before October 9th.
So they don't have to be there between 8 to 3. They can come.
No,
They can come for an hour.
You
or
guys,
2 hours.
I know you guys have class schedules. You can only be there from 8 to 10, and you see a session that's offered from 8 to 10 that you'd like to come to, and there's still seats available.
I think there are several professors that are thinking that they will release some students to some of those sessions. I guess what I want to ask you is, we'll be sending the link out to you. Is there, and they will be responding, you'll be responding to the link. So number one, if you commit to that, then we expect you to go. That would be something they're counting on you. There'll be handouts, there'll be things that you'll be counting numbers, correct?
We have a sign-in at the beginning of the day, but we don't have a sign-in for each session.
Okay, so it's just so could we potentially max you out then? I mean, what if we really got a lot of students?
That's why I've got the website built. So
Okay.
I want them, even if they're only going to come for 1 or 2 sessions, I want them to go on and register them, because I've got maximum seats allocated
All right,
on the website. So as soon as we hit 30 in the room or 35 or whatever the room capacity is, it's just not available.
that's what we need. So when you do that, they again are counting on you to be there. So you'd be taking up a spot of someone else if you didn't come. So it's a very professional opportunity. I think we're very excited that you're allowing us to do that. This is, for the first time, a true partnership between Lancaster Professional Development and our professional development here. We're really making a nice linkage to our community. So I'm thrilled that you're offering that opportunity to us.
Last year, we actually opened it up to any district in Ohio. And we had about 60 people from other places in Ohio, as far away as Northeast Ohio and Cincinnati and everything, coming to our day and sharing in our day. Some of them came to present, some of them came just to see presentations. Again, you know, last year was the first year of our one-to-one project at the high school, and we had a lot of people coming that day to see what we did with the one-to-one. We also had other mini sessions throughout the year where we get districts coming down and, you know, seeing what we do with the one-to-one.
But we somehow missed,
Probably had 60 districts visit us last year at the high school.
and we somehow missed that here. And so we were very excited to be part of a partnership. We're a much closer organization with Lancaster City Schools, and because of that, you're learning about it now. So we're thrilled.
And it's not just, I mean, Lancaster City Schools. If you walk into any of the schools anymore, you're going to see a lot more technology than you
Oh, I
were
think
just a
I
couple
knew
years
that.
ago.
Well, but I think you also need to recognize that Lancaster City Schools is way ahead of the game
Absolutely.
on many respects, and if they can, while they're here, take advantage of everything they can tap into, like these partnerships, they go off to a district that's not maybe up to speed with Lancaster, they'll be the person that can help bring it along.
And also, it's our goal then to bring more technology here for you. So one of the things we want to hear about from you in a future session, probably next week, are the things that you really feel like you need to help you be the best teacher that you can be. So we're very excited about that as well. Questions for
Yeah, are there
Kevin?
any questions? I'm
Well, I
willing
have
to
a
answer
whole
any
bunch.
questions that I
You have to wait a
can.
minute.
You talk about how it was good to have a good social media, and we talk about how it's bad. What if you just don't have one? Like, I just don't partake in
Okay.
that.
We're trying to warn them about
let me answer that
Facebook.
this way.
Okay.
Everybody who applies for a job gets their social media profiles checked.
Oh, I didn't know
Okay.
that.
Can you explain how you do that? I guess that was a follow-up on what she just asked.
Well, I mean, pretty much our principals, if they're looking to hire somebody, they go check you out online.
But if
Okay.
you don't have,
Then they don't have any information to base their decision on.
so is that?
So, do you want to have a very positive presence
Or not.
online? So that if I am looking to hire a teacher and I go and I see, oh my gosh, this teacher has done this and this and this, and oh my gosh, she's engaged in, look, I see an example of how she did PBL one time. You know, that gives me information. If I see nothing, I got no information. Now, keep in mind, for an elementary teaching job, I don't know how many of your elementary teaching jobs, there are hundreds of applicants in our system.
They're
What's going to
prepared
set
for
you
that.
apart? I'm just asking you the question. Again, what did I do? Back in 1993, a long time ago, I coached multiple sports. Any opportunity they threw my way, I took. You know, back then, that's how you made yourself marketable. And you still need to do those things. But one of the ways you make yourself marketable today is to build your positive online presence. Okay?
So the principals are checking Facebook, Twitter, what else would they be looking at?
Those are the big ones. Those really are. LinkedIn, maybe a little bit, but
I think the key
Facebook,
word on
Facebook, I
that is
guarantee
positive.
you, is going to get looked at when you apply for a job.
Aren't you you're the one that's required to do that, right? The district
No.
asks you to take a look at it?
No,
No,
principal
someone,
will.
principal does it.
Or
All right.
Nathan Hill, our director of HR.
Okay.
I look at it for the people I'm looking to hire.
All right.
I do. I look at those things. So,
How would you recommend that we build that positive online experience?
well, one of the things that I tell our teachers in our district, especially like, you know, we have about 200 plus teachers in our district currently using Twitter. Okay, for instance, I tell them, build a professional Twitter account. If you have your own Twitter account that you use with your friends, that's fine. Keep it separate. But build a professional account. Use your district email address. For you, maybe you have a separate Gmail account that you use for your professional Twitter. Use that to engage in positive activities on Twitter. Participate in education-related chats on Twitter. Tweet out information that builds a positive presence about yourself. Communicate and network with other professionals in the field. Okay? Those kind of things. Now, if you want to use your personal Twitter to follow Beyonce or whatever else, you know, you can do that.
So let's see a show of hands. How many of you think you could go ahead and do that right now? Okay.
Same thing with Facebook, folks. You know,
But we could support that, I think, though, with.
Well,
with
maybe
work here.
we can learn how to do that
Yeah.
ourselves.
Oh, I haven't.
no, I know the camera's rolling, but with Facebook, you know, one of the things, you know, as a young person, I'm not so young anymore, but you know, I'm sure that you have fun with your friends on Facebook and different things like that. You know, just know that as potential future employees, that stuff does get looked at, okay? Now, one of the things that I tell our first year teachers when they get hired, and I just had this conversation with them a few weeks ago on when we had our new 25 or 30 new teachers come in, is, you know, tell your buddies on Facebook, tell them all that you're now a teacher, and you're a professional, and you are held to a different standard, okay? Like it or not, you are now that mom and dad's, you're the teacher of their child, their prized possession, okay? If you have things on your personal Facebook that is somewhat offensive, you will have a problem, okay? Pictures of drinking beer. You're perfectly legal to do that. I'm just telling you. Tell your friends, please don't post those pictures of me. Don't tag me in any photos. Keep it separate. Keep it clean. Keep it professional.
Can I add to that? I have a bunch of teachers that from here that just graduated, okay, and they're in their first teaching jobs. And at that point, I will let you be my friend on Facebook because I don't want to be your friend while you're students and whatnot. We're maintaining that professional courtesy. But I've also told them to be accountable to each other, and I'm going to keep them accountable. And I've already seen a couple things, and they're all like in local areas and stuff. And I've sent them messages saying I would strongly advise you to take that off, and they've written back on, okay, thanks, Dr. Dunning. So have someone accountable, have an accountability group too, because I'm like, if you see something on mine too, I expect you now to hold me accountable. So I would recommend that for you.
I just want you to realize that gets looked at. I mean, I didn't have to worry about it back in 1993. I mean, the internet was still some thing in Al Gore's head.
Yeah.
You're probably too young. You're too young to get that reference. But anyway. So anyway, I just ask you to be thoughtful of that, you know, because, you know, we all do things when we're 22 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's the way it is, but the whole world doesn't need to know about it.
In addition to what Dr. Dunning said, you have the ability to really restrict your profile as much as possible so that if a picture is going to sneak up on your profile, you can set your privacy settings that you have to approve it before it even goes up so that you don't get that accidental 15 minutes of that awkward photo up
It's just
there.
not as fun that way, but yes.
But it's safer. So make sure you take a look at your privacy settings if you are going to have that.
My
that
Facebook
fun.
account, you know, I don't ever tweet or I don't ever post anything on Facebook about work. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't post if it was a great day at work or a bad day at work. I just don't. You know. Now, if there's an article that comes out in Lancaster Gazette that this great thing happened at Lancaster City Schools, I might share that up on my wall. It's a great thing. Again, positive profile. Okay. Do I go and post that? You know, anything overtly political and stuff? I don't. I mean, and I suppose I'm at a point in my life now that, you know, I just want to keep in touch with the people that I know and see how their kids are doing, and they can see how my kids are doing, and, you know, and then if we want to go to our class reunion together or things like that, but, you know, just be mindful of that stuff. Anything technology-wise, though, educational technology. I know most of you are you first, second, third, fourth year? What are
A
you?
little bit of everything.
Everything in here?
Could you explain more what they might, if I'm a fifth grade teacher and a principal is coming through doing a walkthrough, what might those expectations be of
First of all, that you keep teaching.
First of all, what?
You keep teaching.
as a
You don't
walkthrough?
even need to acknowledge the principal walked into the room.
My question, I think, though, is what are you wanting the principals to be able to see of the teacher and of the students using technology?
Well, right now, okay, the only way that they're going to check that little box on the walkthrough form that says that technology was used is if they see evidence that students are using the technology. So, the teacher, like me, teaching with PowerPoint, does this get a check off on that form? No. If there's a student up here showing his class this project that he did using the technology, that would check it off. Okay? So again, if I got to describe that more differentiated classroom, maybe you got these centers going on, you got 6 kids over here using an iPad to learn a certain concept and take it to another level. Students are using the technology to learn their skills. Those are the things that the principal is looking for, right there.
As the change occurs in the schools, are you seeing a difference between the people that are, say, maybe mid-40s to the end of their career, resisting this more than perhaps the teachers that are coming in?
No, not now. A few years ago, yes, not now. I have to admit, some of the worst teachers with technology are in their 40s, like me, and some of the best ones are in their 50s. So, and the thing that really separates them is the teacher who changes the focus from themselves to their kids. It's the student-centered approach. And I don't care if you're 22 or 52, you can make that switch happen. And I see a lot of teachers in their 50s who are really great at, they're getting their kids into the technology and they're letting them do it, and they're stepping the back and being more of that facilitator. Some more so than others, some still won't do that. But I don't think there's an age difference now. 5-10 years ago, yes, there was an age difference.
We want our students to come out of here being the best at this as they possibly can be, but if they get assigned to a teacher that's obviously not up to speed, what advice do you have for them?
What advice do I have? Try to find ways. If you come into a Lancaster City classroom, there's going to be access to the technology, okay? Now, if you're going to another school, there may not be, okay, access to the technology. So what you need to do is just learn as much as you can from that teacher while they're there. You don't have to, I've always said this, even though kind of my niche is the educational technology in schools, you don't have to use technology to be a really good, effective teacher. But what technology allows you to do is to keep stepping it up a level. Okay, so if I'm an average teacher, and I would consider myself an average teacher when I was teaching, the use of technology enabled me to go up a little bit, maybe more towards a good teacher. Back then, it was really more focused on the teacher using the technology. Now, it's, am I allowing my students to use the technology, and to what level? Remember that SAMR model? Okay, am I always at the substitution level? Is that what I'm always having my kids do? Am I always having them take notes now on their iPad instead of a notebook? Or am I having them go higher on that scale and taking that deeper dive? You know, that's where it is now.
You know, Kevin, modeling works both ways, and one of the things that we tell our students here is then you take the iPad in, or you sit down next to the student and engage and start modeling some of that professional behavior and facilitate for the classroom teacher, and it works really, really well.
A couple of the most effective teachers we have in our building are not people who use technology according to what I'm telling them to do. Now, by and large, the teachers who are using technology are having more and more success. But there are a couple that are just good without it.
But I think your quote, what kids are doing with technology, is what I keep coming back to whenever I talk to you. It's so driven by the student as opposed to the teacher. And I think if we can keep that focus, get the technology into the kids' hands.
I would say that we are really on the forefront of that thinking. I don't know if some of the other schools are at that point yet, but I think it's just because we've been so immersed in it for now several years that's where our thinking is.
But you kind of tapped into the next question I wanted to ask, and that is if third grade is the year where that first major data point comes where kids have to pass the reading test to be able to go on to the fourth grade, that's the first big mark. Are you able to see, as the, say, maybe 25 third grade teachers in Lancaster City schools, are you able to see an impact of those that are using technology on the ability to get higher scores than those that are not?
I don't think you can make that correlation.
Do you think that's going to come, though, where that correlation
I
is
think
going
right now what you see in our schools is every teacher has the technology. And the way that they're instructing now, all of our reading data now is coming from the technology. Their kids have to be using the technology for them to even get that reading assessment done. Starting at the early ages, you know, first grade, they're taking their STAR assessments on the technology. So the kids are using the technology, and so then the teachers are able to take that data that they get from those scores and modify their instruction. Now, some of the teachers, you know, are not differentiating their instruction to the point that I was talking about earlier. Some of them aren't getting that involved in the technology. We don't have any data that says that they're being less effective or more effective at this point.
But as we go into this first year, though, of everybody taking these tests online, it's saying 5-10 years from now, is that going to be a different story? do you think?
Well, I think the bigger difference in that is Common Core. Because now, I mean, and I think that's really, in my world, that's really a huge game changer. Because now it really explicitly states the technology things that they need to do with the other standards. Because before, it was, you had your technology standards on the shelf. You had your math and science and social studies and language arts standards and indicators, and that's where you focused your attention. And then what I also saw was a lot of times when the test was over in May, they get that technology book out and they do some activities in the year. Kids would have a great time and the school year would be over. Sad, but it's true. Now with Common Core, that doesn't happen. That's interwoven throughout the school year. So that's in the educational technology world. You can say whatever you want about Common Core, but it really hits it.
Well, we've always said assessment drives instruction, and that is exactly what's going to happen here.
Yep, and it used to be, because technology was not assessed, okay, and it was not part of these
But now
standards.
it is part of it.
The teachers were assessed on how their kids did on reading, writing, math, right? And a little bit of science and social studies, but, so what did teachers spend their time doing? Drill and kill on reading, writing, and math, okay? You cannot, you're still gonna do some drill and kill. Again, thinking of that Sammer model, you still gotta do some of those things. But now you have to do other activities as well, and they have to tie the technology pieces in there, which has never happened before.
Just give you a little personal anecdote here why we're really stressing the technology. This is the first time, and I have 4 children, you know, ranging in all ages. 2 are out of school. My 2 that are in school, and they're not in Lancaster, but a different school, I am seeing the technology. I mean, it is incredible. We've only had how many weeks of school? I can't even begin to explain to you how different their lessons are this year. I mean, Matthew's doing a lesson for a teacher, and last night he's like, I have to find 2 videos, I have to put the link, I have to put it on a discussion post, I have to tie it back. I mean, they're doing the technology, and we want you to be at that level. And I know it's taken all these years to get up to, you know, this point.